Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 10, the Season 2 finale of Apple TV's Severance, entitled Cold Harbor. It's going to be weird to start my video about an Apple TV show talking about FX, but I've already gone too far down this road to not finish this thought. So a lot of times on this channel, I've said that what I love about FX is that they let creators create. I love seeing fresh and new ideas being introduced and executed on by the most brilliant creative minds. I'm in awe of that. Like I feel like I lack so much of that, and I yearn to have it. So I love it when I see it. I love creators who are given the opportunity to do what they want to do and not have these networks and streamers not shackling them by being too concerned with broad audience appeal. Not that there's something wrong with that. I expect them to be concerned about that, but I still like letting creators create. And so I love that Apple has given Ben Stiller and his team over at Severance the ability to do that, to have these wild ideas and push the envelope and do things that might be, off-putting or confusing to a wider audience. Because when you do that and you allow them to create, you get episodes like this. And I'm not going to dive head first into hyperbole and see how many, ridiculously over the top compliments I can shower upon this episode. But because Apple wasn't scared to let these creators create, I think we got to see some of the coolest fucking shit that we've ever seen on TV last night. At least it was last night for me. The concepts and ideas that this season introduced and executed on in this episode were some of my favorite things that I've seen on television. And I'm not saying this is the best episode of TV ever or anything like that. I'm just saying that some of these moments and some of these ideas, I didn't even fucking know I wanted to see it until I was experiencing it. And I was like, holy shit, this is fucking amazing. And all season, I've been saying how impressed I've been with the scenarios that this show has been able to create for these characters, and how the concept of being severed creates all these unique and creative ideas for this team to explore. And I thought this episode paid off so many of those ideas perfectly. There are three moments specifically that happened in this episode that I just thought were absolutely amazing. And I'd have sat up here and sang this episode's praises if I had only gotten one thing that I liked as much as those three things. So to get three things, I don't know, man. I love seeing brilliant minds create brilliant art. And I think this show, regardless of what degree you do or do not like it, I think this show has done so much for the medium of television and just raised the bar for the types of concepts and ideas that audiences are willing to accept. I think that TV and film in general are going to be better off going forward for what I think this show has opened up the door for audience to see. Hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms. If you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't, I am an acquired taste, but you can join the Patreon where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today, Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel, or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there since it's the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not going to lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film, and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. This was a pretty eventful and monster-sized episode, and I don't want to keep you guys here for 45 minutes, so I think I want to talk about this episode through the lens of the three things that I thought were amazing. And the first thing was the conversation between Mark's innie and outie. Maybe I was so impressed by that because I've sat through 2 seasons of this show and never once thought I sure would like to see Mark's innie and outie have a chat. But once it was happening and I was just sitting there watching, I was grateful that I was getting to watch something that fucking cool on television. The idea of 2 different versions of the same human being having a conversation with one another, even coming down to the idea of using the camcorder and able to accomplish this. Just rewind from that moment, no pun intended, and think about the path to get there, needing the ability for him to to pass in and out of a threshold willingly. So they brought back the cabins from season 1. The path to getting Cobell there, the reintegration not working, setting up the conflict for Innie and Outie Mark over Helly and Gemma. Like, they set all this up to create this like unthinkable moment. And then during the moment itself, it goes left in ways that I bet a lot of us didn't even think to consider. Like, again, I don't know about you guys. Maybe you guys thought of everything, but like, I never really thought of like, what if Innie Mark and Outie Mark don't agree? Like, granted, they didn't set up the idea of them needing to be in agreement until this episode, but still, I'm sitting there watching this amazing scene of them being able to talk to one another, and then it devolves into a fucking argument, like a disagreement. Like, man, I did not see that coming. And all I could think of while I was watching it was just like, this is fucking amazing. You know, I was already in awe of them being plausibly set up to speak to one another. And then you take a massive step further and put them at odds with one another. Like, this shit, man, first fucking class, man. First fucking class. And so what happens at the cabin? Cobell lays out the plan to Outie Mark and Devin for how they're going to get Gemma out of there and bring down Lumen. So Innie Mark, this is the plan. He finishes Cold Harbor. He races to the exports hallway elevator, down the black hallway. He goes down to where Gemma's at. He will sever in that elevator and become his Outie again. Outie Mark, down on the testing floor, will then go find Gemma, bring her up from the testing floor, after which her and Innie Mark will escape. It was a lot to follow in the moment, but it tracks. And what's cool about it is that because it is so much to follow in that moment, what Cobell doesn't say kind of helps to hide, I think, some great moments later in the episode. But we'll get to that. Now, of course, this plan relies on Innie Mark's cooperation, and this is how we end up with Innie and Outie Mark having a conversation / disagreement. Innie Mark makes the excellent case of, 1, how does he know this isn't bullshit? And 2, think about what he has to lose if he goes through with this plan. It's basically all for Outie benefit and all of a loss for Innie Mark. And the turning point of the conversation happens when Outie Mark brings up Helly. And he's like, oh, yes, I heard you have a crush on some chick down there named Heleny, something like that. Well, think about however much you like her and then add on like way more time for me and my wife. And then that's how much I love my wife. So you should definitely let me go back to my wife. And I'm just like, dawg, you just told him to compare how he feels about Helly to how you feel about Gemma. And the most important component in this comparison is time, of which you are now asking him to willingly sacrifice. Like, you basically just reminded him that if he doesn't do what you say, he can now possibly help himself to all of the time with Helly and all of that greatness and happiness that you just said that you had with Gemma. And sure enough, that's what when the conversation goes left. And I love talking about sinister lighting. I love the sinister lighting here on Innie Mark as he starts to do his heel turn. And ultimately, Innie Mark is just like, no, I can't trust you, so get fucked. And man, I saw a thing on Facebook earlier where someone was talking about how they didn't think a great show could be devoid of humor. Like a great show needs to have some sort of humor to it. And they mentioned this show as being one that's kind of low on the funny, and like, I could not disagree more. Like, y'all already know how I feel about the door salesman interview for what was that, like episode 4? But the way Outie Mark was pissed off at Innie Mark after the conversation was so funny to me. Like, he storms in the cabin, he's like, I mentioned reintegration to him, and he basically called bullshit. And it's like he talks about him like he's a different person, a lesser person. And I think that's intentional because it's actually in stark contrast with the scene later when he tells Helly that he wants to be with her. He's like, I want to be with you. And she's like, but I'm her, referring to Helena. Mark sees his Innie as a different and lesser person, and Helly sees the ways in which her and Helena are the same. So interesting. Anyway, I was always funny how he's pissed at his Innie like that. He's like, this motherfucker's so unreasonable. Anyway, moving on. We also learn in this scene what exactly the macro data refiners are refining. They're essentially creating Innies. the boxes that they put the numbers in on the computer, they're going off how they naturally feel, and like I just feel away, so I'll put it in this box. That feeling is tied to the Egan's, not the Egan's tempers, makes like they got a bad attitude, but the tempers, the woe, frolic, dread, and malice, the Kier Egan whatever tempers. The feelings are tied to the tempers, and per Cobell, they're the building blocks of, in this case, Gemma's mind. This even makes a little more sense of the Gemma episode. Not that it was confusing, but it just adds a little bit more context to when we saw her going into all those rooms in that episode, like the dentist room and probably the thank you card one, where probably be filed under her dread temper. So, and then this also opens up possibilities for the writing team to explore what Dylan and Irving have been refining as well. Now I'm extra curious about that, especially since we don't see Irving at all in this episode, which is a bit surprising. I didn't see a lot of Dylan either, but anyway. Mark has created 24 files for Gemma so far. Cold Harbor would be the 25th and the last one, which is why he has to escape with Gemma right away after he finishes it. Let's see. When Mark arrives at Lumen, the magnitude of his achievement, remember, this is supposed to be like a benchmark moment in humanity, is depicted in this painting that's right outside the elevators, and it positions Mark as like this savior-like being to everyone else that we've met on the show. One thing I don't get here, and maybe it's the episode and I just missed it, feel free to enlighten me in the comments if you understand this, but I don't understand why the lights were off at Lumen throughout this entire sequence. Like, at first I'm like, are they doing this in the middle of the night in secret? But then Milkshake is there, and everyone's watching him complete Cold Harbor. Dylan shows up, so like that's not the case. I don't understand why the lights were off when they arrived, and I'm like, why is he refining in the dark? Like I don't understand why he was expected to work in the dark, especially if this was supposed to be the regular working hours. Anyway, Mark and Helly arrive in the MDR room, and there's like this Kier Egan robot with a note from Milkshake commemorating Mark's completion of Cold Harbor. Helly tells Mark about the weird conversation with James from earlier in the episode. This conversation amounted to James saying that he sees Kier in Helly, but not in his daughter, Helena. I don't know what to make of that yet, but again, let me know in the comments what you think about that scene, but weird scene. But I will say this about that scene. I love this shot of Helly drawing back the pen to stab James with. I thought that was a really cool shot. Anyway, Helly stealthily hands Mark the directions to the exports hallway elevator, and this is probably the only problem I had with this episode. How is Mark going to complete the plan without the directions, since Helly didn't know about the plan? She wasn't at the cabin. Like, I don't recall them accounting for needing Helly there with the directions to the elevator. Like that's a very important step that worked out for Mark, and I don't recall hearing that in the plan. But anyway, at this point in the narrative, while Helly and Mark are finishing up Cold Harbor, Dylan returns to work. However, he's not actually sent to work in the MDR room. He's instead sent to another room to read his Audie's response to his resignation request. This is the next favorite moment of the episode that I had that I want to talk about. As I've already covered, I was thoroughly impressed by how they set up and paid off Innie and Outie Mark being able to talk to one another. Now, here I am watching the two Dylans have a conversation with each other, but through completely different means. And I was just blown away by this. Again, like, what a great idea. I love that they thought to do it this way. And then the response is great too. Like, for starters, before we even get to the response, I love how Milkshake's like, this is likely going to trigger an emotional response from you, so I'm going to let you read it here alone, and then takes off running out the room. And like, again, who says this show isn't funny? Now, in retrospect, I realized that he was trying to run back and forth to make sure that he was present for whenever Mark finished Cold Harbor, but in the moment, it looked like he was like running to avoid seeing Dylan cry or something, and I just thought that was hilarious. But anyway, the response starts out in typical Dylan fashion. He's, fuck you. But it evolves into something really sad and moving about insecurity and self-doubt. And Dylan seemed moved by it, but he had to be flattered as well, right? Because his Outie called him like a badass or something like that. That had to be really moving for him. But the letter ends with Outie Dylan saying that he can leave if he wants, but he believes that any Dylan should stay. Speaking of leaving Dylan, let's move back to the MDR room and Helly and Mark. So Once Mark finishes Cold Harbor, the Keir Egan robot returns and announces an out-of-breath milkshake like he's like Michael Jordan and the 97 Bulls. Another bit of evidence of how big of an NBA fan that Ben Stiller must be. But then I love this exchange with Milkshake and the robot because you, of course, assume that the robot's like pre-programmed. Like, it's just going to say regular stuff. I'm Keir Egan. I'm doing this and that. What the fuck? You know, whatever. It's got shit that it says, right? But then the robot starts to chide Milkshake over his use of big words in the moment. And then they get into this like real time kind of spat, and Milkshake makes like a short joke, like, "Yeah, this robot 5 inches taller than you actually was," and the robot's like, "All right, bitch." He says thanks for the feedback or something like that, but it amounted to "all right, bitch." Like I see it. He said his government name, so you knew it was smoke. He's like, "All right, bitch, Seth, Seth ass bitch." Anyway, Milkshake. Then introduces Mark's true reward, a marching band called Choreography and Merriment. And then we get our reward, another Milkshake dance number. The marching band, the lights, the moves. I think I like this one better than the season 1 dance number. I may change my mind at some point, but if Milkshake gets a dance number every season, I'm okay with it. So it's time to put the plan into action. Helly and Mark exchange "see you at the equators." It's a callback to an earlier conversation about continents or some shit. Something I suspect likely is going to come back around in season 3. And Helly steals Milkshake's walkie-talkie as a distraction and runs off, causing him to chase her and allowing Mark to slip out. So she gets him to go in the bathroom, him being Milkshake, and she locks him in. He's not locked in, but she throws her body up against the door. And just as he's about to get out, Dylan makes his triumphant return and blocks the door with a vending machine. Moving back to Mark, he's making his way toward the elevator while Gemma is being led by Sandra Bernhardt to the Cold Harbor room. She does the little finger prick scan and the door opens, and in the room is nothing but a crib. It looks like the exact same crib that Mark was taking apart in the flashbacks in an earlier episode. So it's not just like there is a crib. It looks like the actual crib that they had for their baby. In this scene, a lot of dangling plot threads come together. We understand Cold Harbor, its purpose, this test that's been talked about throughout the season and probably throughout the show as a whole. So the test is Cold Harbor, and it's to determine if the severance is fully worked. Like, James is watching as Gemma enters the room wearing her coat from her life with Mark, and inside the room, again, it's the same crib that they had. At least it looked like it to me. And she's asked to take it apart, does it without issue, proving that essentially the severance has worked entirely. Because if anything could trigger her subconscious to remember some inkling of her real life, it would be a reminder of such a deep and specific trauma. So I would imagine that the 25 files and slash innies that Mark has inadvertently created were probably like increasingly more likely to trigger her subconscious. Like maybe like whatever the first one was, and it's probably Miss Casey. Now that I think about it, well, I haven't thought about it at all, but maybe Miss Casey is maybe like the last one prior to this one, since Miss Casey has actually seen and interacted with Mark's innie, still a version of Mark, but only really a visual representation. But whatever the first one was, it was probably like, you know, okay, this is our first try at it. Let's see if it works. And then they progressively get more likely to trigger a response, culminating with this one. Like if being reminded of the baby that you lost doesn't trigger your subconscious, nothing will. So now I want to take a brief detour to talk about whatever was going on with Drummond. I haven't liked anything involving goats on this show yet at all. Like, I feel like they've done a poor job of tying that in with everything else. It feels way outside of everything else that the show is doing, and it feels like weird for the sake of weird, even though I feel fairly confident it's not that, but it feels like that because it doesn't tie in well with anything else, and it feels so different than everything else that's taking place on the show. But we see Brienne of Tarth. She's pushing a goat in a cart down a hallway to a room in which Drummond eventually joins her. Maybe it's there on screen how sacrificing this goat was relevant, but I'm at the point of almost fully checking out whenever a goat's on the screen. So if they made that sacrifice made sense, let me know in the comments. But just as Drummond is about to shoot the goat, he hears a banging from outside, which is Mark trying to break down a door. He goes out, he beats the shit out of Mark, and just as he's about to choke Mark to death, Brienne of Tarth comes and saves him, and a much more evenly matched fight begins. Brienne actually beats Drummond, and she's about to kill him, but Mark stops her while she has him at gunpoint, and then he stops her, and then he takes Drummond at gunpoint and has Drummond take him to the exports elevator. As they're descending, Mark informs Drummond that he's going to sever, and when that happens, and then that's when it happens, and Outie Mark accidentally shoots Drummond like Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction. Rejoining the Gemma plotline, Mark makes his way to the Cold Harbor room, but he can't get in. He gets his finger pricked, but of course his blood's not going to open up the door. But he then gets the brilliant idea for a brilliant idea for both the character and whoever the writer is that came up with this idea. I love thinking about all the steps that lead up to a cool event. I talked about it earlier in this video. But everything served a purpose here. Like, the killing of Drummond wasn't just that's kind of a funny moment, like it was in Pulp Fiction. It was to get us to this moment where Mark uses Drummond's blood to prick the finger machine, or trick the finger prick machine. Yeah, trick the finger prick machine. And I honestly feel like if that technology was real, that probably still wouldn't even work. But it's so fucking smart and creative, and I just loved it. Anyway. It's at this point that we reach my third favorite thing about this episode. I love how they set up all these different dynamics between Mark and Gemma here. I said earlier how what Miss Cobell didn't say helped hide this reveal, but it was so fucking cool to realize, like, from moment to moment what was going to happen, like right before it happened, and then anticipate a great interaction and then get that great interaction. So it was a really engaging and it almost felt like an interactive experience watching the show. So when Mark opens the door, I'm immediately like, oh shit, she's severed in that room. She's not going to recognize him. And sure enough, he goes in there, she doesn't recognize him, and you have this great scene of like their love for one another transcending the severance and like breaking through all of the work that Egan had done. And he's James watching, he's pissed, and it's like, oh, this is great, right? And then as Mark is starting to coax Gemma out of the room, again, I'm like, oh shit, when she comes out, she's going to go back to being actual Gemma, and this is going to be like the husband-wife reunion. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens, and it's absolutely great. It's a great moment. And then they go to leave, and then right before they get the elevator, again, I turn to my wife, and I'm like, oh shit, she about to be Miss Casey. And he's about to be the innie. And then that happens, like they were like kissing or some shit at that point, and then they change people. And then we get to that door, and then the door's a callback. Like, this is the same door, I'm assuming, that Helly punched through, trying to, I think she was trying to pass a note out through that door or some shit in season 1. But she got her hand all bloody and shit. Gemma goes through the door, severs, and becomes Gemma again, because remember, she was Miss Casey. But Mark hasn't gone through yet, and he's still innie Mark. So now he's in that place where, like, he knows everything. Like, he knows the plan. He knows what he's supposed to be doing. He sees Gemma on the other side of the door, knowing that his Outie's wife, and his Outie's wife is now free. And then at this point, he's kind of already won. Like, Gemma's free. For all intents and purposes, Luma can still be defeated. And then Helly appears over his shoulder. And I think that, like, even though they drew it out longer, we all knew what it was in that moment. Like, even if this was going to end up being the end of Lumen and Mark, again, Gemma was already free. Mission accomplished. Like, he could spend the rest of whatever time he has left with Helly, and that's the worst case scenario. He could get considerably more time than that. So Milkshake, he eventually busts out of the bathroom, but he's faced down by Dylan and the entire marching band. And that's essentially where we leave the season. No Irving. We didn't get any closure regarding, like, Milkshake's, like, racial issues with Lumen. I would have liked that, but beggars can't be choosers, man. Look at what they're giving me. How dare I ask for more? But this episode gave me more than I hoped for, so I certainly can't sit here bitching about what they did give me. Innie Mark has freed Gemma, and she briefly reunited with Outie Mark, but Innie Mark has decided to stay with Helly. Gemma's now free. Like I said, the work done on her has been all for naught, really. Like, I feel like Lumen is back to ground zero. Like what you got now? People in the real world, like Devin and Rickon, they're about to learn a lot about what's been going on at Lumen, and they're about to get Gemma back, an alive Gemma, which is going to be moderately shocking for Devin and extremely shocking for Rickon. There's still a lot of mysteries left to explore, and this great episode and season has opened the door even further for this show to continue to be groundbreaking. So that's all I got. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and until season 3, peace.